with that, we're gonna go ahead and jump in because this is a pretty long 2-hour workshop. I got it extended because it was originally 1 hour, but there's a lot of stuff I want to go over, and we're going to take our time, make sure that everyone is able to stay on board. So this is kind of the overview of what we're going to do today. Time depending, we're going to install everything from total scratch, learn how to use Git locally, because it's actually a local tool. You don't need to connect it to the internet to use it for anything. Then we're going to use GitHub, which is sort of a remote version. It lets you use Git over the internet. So we'll learn how to combine those together. And then there's a whole bunch of miscellaneous, more advanced Git stuff that if you're more experienced, that might be something that's more interesting to you. That's probably going to be closer, maybe the last half hour of the workshop. So if you already know how to use Git pretty well, and if you want to stay for a quick review, I'm not going to kick you out, but definitely, if you're more experienced, you might benefit more, especially from like the last half hour of this. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so first of all, what is Git? That's the Git logo you have there. Git is a version control system created by Linus Torvalds, and he's actually the guy who invented Linux. Like, he wrote the Linux kernel, and he actually invented Git because he was trying to figure out how he could control the versions of his own Linux kernel. And the software available, he didn't like it. Back in those days, a lot of times people used like zip files and email to send their code around. And that wasn't an efficient model. He didn't like it. So he took 2 weeks and he actually wrote the first prototype of Git. It looks a lot different now after some time has passed, and people have made a lot of updates and improvements to it to make it more user-friendly. But yeah, that's the origin of it. It's relatively new. Because probably the last 20 years or so, it's only been around. So it's quickly has become an industry standard. So you have some other version control systems like Mercurial is a popular one, SVN you have, but Git is by far like the most dominant one. GitHub, right? If you've heard of that, it was all invented based on Git. So that's that. Okay, so why should you care? We have already kind of touched on this, but it's the most popular version control system out there. It makes collaborating on software projects a lot easier. So think about Google Drive. If you've ever used that before to work on a document or presentation together, Git is the same thing, but for software. And so because it's for software, you have to do things a little differently than you would on Google Drive, but it's the same sort of idea. And it's widely used throughout the industry. Definitely a skill you want to have on your resume. So let's go ahead and install Git. So I'm actually going to just quick poll. What operating systems are people running out there? I would assume we'd have mostly Windows people. But do we have, okay, Windows. Okay, good. Yeah, so I'm actually going to fire up, okay, Mac. So if you're on Mac, if you go ahead and head to that link, and it will give you the instructions. I'm going to actually screen share and walk through on Windows how to install this. But if you're on Mac, I recommend grabbing Homebrew. So if you head over to that website, brew.sh, I believe. Let me know if that link works. That you'll be able to get Homebrew, and then you can use that to install Git. All the instructions are at that link for Mac if you're having trouble with that. If you're on Linux, you most likely can take care of yourself. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and fire up my Windows VM and share that. One moment. Alrighty. Can everyone see this? Can you see Windows now? Yes, okay, awesome. So this is actually, I'm not running on Windows, I'm running on a Mac, but I have this in a virtual machine, and you can see like activate Windows. I haven't even activated Windows or anything like that. So this is a completely fresh install of Windows. So if you just follow along with me here, you should be able to get it to work exactly the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and head to that link first. So you can also, if you just Google Git, or what I think the default here is Bing on Windows, you should be able to get to the main git-scm.com. That's your main site. You want to head here to downloads. Then you'll see you have the different options. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. So here you'll be able to grab the downloads. Again, for people just joining, this is git-scm.com. And then you head over to downloads and you want to grab the download for your system. So I want Windows, and it's going to start my download. So go ahead and wait for that to download. It shouldn't take that long. And then when you run it, it's going to be start up the installer. Please, by the way, if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm like actively monitoring the chat. So throw those out sooner rather than later, and I will try to respond to those. Okay, so go ahead and allow the security thing to go by. You'll see this whole license thing. You can go past that. It's going to give you an install location. Default one is fine. In terms of all these checkboxes. So I don't know how well you can see the presentation. It might be kind of small, but there's a whole bunch of checkboxes of all the different components. I recommend checking the last one for Windows updates. So Git for Windows updates, that's a good thing. The rest of it, you can probably leave. If you want a desktop icon, the first two boxes there, you can check those. But I'm just going to go ahead and check the last one and leave everything as default. Same thing, this next one, leave as default. This is an important step. So how well can you guys actually see this? Is it too small? Okay, so if you're on Mac, you head to that brew.sh, right? And there's that long script. So if you copy and paste that into a terminal, do you have a terminal open? Okay, if you copy and paste that into a terminal and then run it, that should run for a while. Like some things will happen. You'll see like text flying by. Do you see that? Okay, it might take some time. So just give it a couple minutes. But when that finishes, let me know, and I will walk you through what you need to do from there. Okay, so for people who, yeah, sure thing. So for people who are on Windows, you're going to want to choose what editor you want Git to use. I'm actually, in this tutorial, I'm going to grab VS Code. It's very popular. People are using it a lot more these days. By default, Git defaults to Vim, which is, you can kind of read the whole message about it being the Vim editor, while powerful, can be hard to use. So that's definitely the case. If you do learn, I think Vim is very rewarding if you do learn it, but you probably don't want to start off with that. So I'd recommend switching it to whatever. There's a whole bunch of options: Notepad++, Visual Studio Code, Insiders, Sublime Text. Whatever you have, that's fine. I'm going to set it to Visual Studio Code, which I don't have downloaded. So I'm going to actually head over to the Visual Studio Code site and download that. You can just Google Visual Studio Code, or if you're doing the installer along with me and you don't have it and you change it, it will force you to go to this link. So go ahead and download that. Same thing. If you're just jumping in now, I wonder if there's a way. I've seen other people have been able to like pin a link, but I'm not sure how to do that. So I'm just going to keep kind of posting this throughout. Okay, so if you're just joining now, we're actually installing Git. You can go ahead and head over to that site and then head to downloads, choose your operating system, and follow the instructions. If you're on Mac, I recommend you install through Homebrew. And I'll put the link for that in again. So go ahead and take that, follow the instructions there, and run that script in the terminal, and then I'll walk you through what you need to do after that. Okay, so back to the Windows. So, okay, accept the license agreement for VS Code. Yes, yes. One thing I would do is check all of these boxes. This will it'll let you like right click and open files with VS Code, which is definitely useful. You could configure this yourself later if you want, but I recommend doing it in the installer. And create a desktop icon, that's always good. And then just go ahead and install that. So we're going to wait for that to take a minute. So for my Mac people, do you have Homebrew installed? Yes, okay. So my Mac people have Homebrew installed. Well, at least one of them does. Okay, once you have Homebrew installed, I think you can just do Brew Install Git. If you're just joining now, you can see those two links depending on whether you're on Windows or Mac. The Brew is for Mac if you need to get Homebrew, and the other one is for Windows. Okay, so I'm not going to launch Visual Studio Code right now, but yeah, we got that installed. Now we can go ahead and, let me see, head back to our installer here and see if it will let me. Oh, it may not let me do it now. I may need to actually start Visual Studio Code for it to recognize. Okay. It's going to let me do it now. Let's see. No, okay. I'm going to go ahead and rerun the installer then. So you may need to install Visual Studio Code first. Sometimes you have to do a reboot, but it didn't make me do it last time when I tested this. So again, if you're just joining, I would recommend checking this check daily for Git updates. Now let's see if it will let me do it. Okay, now it's going to let me do that. Okay, so yeah, make sure you switch the default editor to Visual Studio Code or Sublime Text or whatever you're using. Because you most likely do not want to try to deal with them. Okay, adjusting your path environment, just stick with the recommended, stick with the default. Okay, this one I would say to change. So if you've gotten this far, you're still following along, choose the default behavior of Git pull. I would switch that to only ever fast forward instead of the default of fast forward and merge. We're actually going to get into why that's a good thing and why you'd want to do this. But I recommend that everyone use this as the default. It has more intuitive behavior. You can leave everything else as default. Should be fine. Then go ahead and hit install, and you should be able to get it installed. Okay, so if you are on Mac and you've gotten Homebrew installed, yeah, sure thing. Whoever just said thank you. Oh, no, wait, that's the wrong chat. Okay. If you are on Mac, you want to go ahead and run Brew, and you've gotten Homebrew installed. Run Brew Install Git, and that will take a minute or two, but after that runs, you'll just have Git installed. That's pretty simple. Homebrew is, if you're on Mac, I strongly recommend you use Homebrew to install a lot of your software. It just keeps things a lot simpler versus trying to install everything with GUIs from the web. Okay, so we've completed the Git setup wizard. I don't want to view the release notes. You probably don't either. So that's great. We can close that. With that, I'm going to switch over. So that's basically the install process you need to do on Windows here. You can fire up Visual Studio Code. And if you want to test to make sure it works, you can go up here to Terminal, go to New Terminal, and then it might take a minute, but eventually your shell will load up here. And just go ahead and type git-v, or no, -- version is what you want. So if you run git space -- version, and on Mac, if after you've done brew install, go ahead and try the same thing. If you run that in your terminal, you should get back a version. So say git version and then some version. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same one. Most of the features are going to be in all versions of Git that we're using today. So does anyone, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop for a minute. Does anyone having problems with that? Or are people still installing, or are we good to move on at this point? All good? Okay. If there's anyone who's just joining, by the way, like I can catch you up. It's not too late. It's only been 20 minutes. Okay, you're still installing? Okay, it's fine. I'll give it a minute. Yeah, if you just jumped on, how do you get into the terminal in Visual Studio Code? Okay, so up here in the top bar, you have a bunch of options, right? Go to Terminal, New Terminal. And that should pop up this little terminal here on the bottom. Yeah, so what I was going to say is if you're still, if you just popped into this workshop and you have no idea what's going on, please send a message in the chat. It's only been 20 minutes. I can still catch you up. We haven't gotten past the point of no return yet. So if you just joined, please send a message in the chat and I'll get you caught up. Otherwise, I'm going to move on here momentarily once we have people. Okay, what settings do you need to change while installing Git? Okay, so I will go ahead and uninstall. I wonder if it'll let me run the installer again. That's an interesting question. There are some settings that I would recommend changing. So let me go back to I don't know. We'll see if it'll let me run it again, even though I already have it installed. Or if it's going to do something else. Oh, okay. It looks like it will let me change. Okay. So I'm going to run through the installer again. If you're on Mac, it's not going to give you any options. It'll just install it with mostly the right options, so you should be fine. If you're on Windows, though, you have this whole installer. So the first thing you're going to come across is this check daily for Git for Windows updates. It's the bottom checkbox on the select components. You want to check that so you can get updates. Make sure you change the default editor away from Vim. Vim, the ubiquitous text editor, is great, but not for our purposes today. So go ahead and switch to VS Code, Sublime Text. If you use something else other than these, you can also use this select other editor and you can configure that. But I'm not going to be covering that today. So I would just stick to Visual Studio Code. And then leave this as the recommended, leave that as the recommended, leave this as the recommended. The only other thing you want to change is on this choose the default behavior of Git pull, you want only ever fast forward. For many users, the default of this fast forward or merge is like the standard behavior, but it's not. It will often do things that you don't want it to do. So I strongly recommend you switch that to only ever fast forward. And if you forgot to do it or something, or you didn't do it, it's not a big, okay. So CJ got a message of not recognized. So most likely something went wrong in your install. Did you download this installer and run through the whole thing? Yes, interesting. Well, that should have worked. What I would do then is if you do have it installed, then head over to your Windows thing and head to uninstall, add and remove programs. Try uninstalling and reinstalling it. I don't actually use Windows. You don't have to. So if you use Sublime Text or something else, so if you can use, it doesn't, yeah, I know, go ahead. So there's actually in the dropdown, if it's Sublime is one of the options. I'm just recommending for this one, if you don't have an editor you already use, then go for VS Code. But if you use Sublime, then just choose the Sublime option. That's fine. Whatever you do, don't leave it on Vim ubiquitous text editor. You will not enjoy the experience. So yeah, CJ, if you're having issues, head here to add remove, uninstall it, and give it another shot. Because again, this is a brand new install of Windows. So if this installer is working for me, it should work for your Windows install as well. No, but you may need to, if you try to do the thing where you're running the installer, if you needed to have VS Code installed before you started the installer. So if you have to exit the installer and go back and click download again and run it again, because I ran into that. I must have done it in the other order when I tested this for the workshop. So exit the install process, reopen it, and give it another shot. It should recognize it. You shouldn't have to set anything as a default, although that might be a good idea. You can enable the experimental support if you want, but you don't need it for this workshop. I'm not super sure what it does. I tried it both ways, and you did it all from scratch. Okay, yeah. See, that's the thing with Windows. Sometimes if you just do it over again, it works. So I don't daily drive Windows. I usually run Linux, and I'm going to be, for the actual like workshopy portion after the install, I'm going to be jumping over to Linux because that is what I run day to day. But the commands are going to be the same across whatever. Once you have it installed, you shouldn't ever have to install it again. I know there's a lot of options, and like it can be hard to configure software, so that's why I figured it'd be good to go through this. Do we have anyone else who is still not gotten it working yet? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone in chat, so I'm going to go ahead and head back to my your main is on Windows, but you work with Linux Mint. Yeah, I recommend getting used to Linux is a valuable skill. Because remember, the guy who wrote Git, he invented Linux. So it's definitely designed with that sort of user interface in mind. Okay, so with that, let me see if I can get my presentation. Yeah, it just makes a lot of command line tools a lot easier to use. And Windows is great for a lot of things. Like game support on Windows is so much better than anything else. And Windows has gotten a lot better than like if you've used Windows like back in the Vista days or whatever. It definitely was not always a great experience. Windows 10 is actually very good. But I'd already jumped ship several years ago, so I went to Linux and never looked back. If you're interested in learning more about Linux, I'll probably run a workshop on it at KnightHacks at some point in the future. And you can definitely just DM me on Discord or whatever if you're trying to get it set up. I'm happy to help. Okay, so we should have that installed. So now let's actually learn how to use Git. So what you're going to want to do to use Git is you need to create a folder for your repository. So the way Git tracks like a repository is via folder. So if you just want to do this all from the shell, which is how I recommend doing it, if you just run mkdir, which stands for make directory, so directory folder, same thing. If you run mkdir and then some name, it can be whatever name you want. I chose hello world, but you could choose like first Git repository or your name or whatever. Just make some sort of folder. And then cd, that's your change directory. So that just means like change folders. You want to change directories into whatever that directory you made is. And then you're going to want to run git init. So let me know if that works. After you run git init, you should see something like this, initialized empty git repository in. This might be different because this is for my machine, but you should see something like that, initialized empty git repository. Can I get some confirmations from people that that is working? Yep, okay, you got anyone else? Can anyone else confirm? If you want to also kind of jump ahead a little, we're going to run Git Status. Yeah, sure, how do we do that again? Okay, do you have Git installed? Or did you just join? I know people are like joining as this is going on, so you have Git installed. Okay, so if you're so this is in Visual Studio Code in that terminal. This is something, if you're a beginner, you might not know, but anytime you see this, I don't know, maybe you can't even see it because the slides are too small. But if you can see this $, anytime you see one of these $signs in front of a line, that means you're supposed to run it in a terminal. So if you run this, and actually, I don't know, this might not work in PowerShell. You can also just create a new folder the normal way. Like if you open up your file manager and create a new folder, like right click and do a new folder, you can do that too. Do you have Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio? Okay, just Visual Studio. So that is a little different than Visual Studio Code. And I haven't used it before, so I'm not too sure how that would work. The other thing you can do is if you head your Windows bar in the bottom left and you run PowerShell, you should be able to get, or you can also, so you can either go for a PowerShell or you can use Git Bash. And if either of those programs will give you a terminal that's like separate from your editor. So you don't have to use the integrated editor in VS Code. You can just use any terminal. If you're on Mac, there's like the terminal app. If you're on Linux, you'll have some kind of terminal. Whatever your terminal is, you can either use PowerShell or Git Bash. Both of those should work on Windows. Let me know if that fixes it for you. If not, I'll try to help you here. So if you've run git init, hopefully you have all run git init, and that just initializes or kicks off your repository to get it moving. And if you run git status, it should spit out a whole bunch of information about what's going on. Might give you some suggestions of what to do. Git bash is great. If you want to use git bash, by all means do it. I just know Visual Studio Code right now, if I was going to recommend an install to somebody who doesn't know how to do anything, I would definitely go for Visual Studio Code. It's well put together. But feel free to use whatever setup you want. It shouldn't matter. So if you run git status, it'll give you some information about git status is a command that if you're not sure what's going on in Git, I strongly recommend running git status. It will likely tell you at least something that can help you figure out what's going on. Okay. So the next thing we need to do for Git is actually add some content. So we've created a new blank repository, right? Repository folder, it's a blank folder that has nothing in it. What we want to do is add some content to that folder. So you don't literally type this out, vim KnightHacks.js. You could do something like this. Just what you want to do is whatever editor you're using. I use Vim. So whatever editor you're using, if you're in Visual Studio Code, then you want to start a new file. There should be an option like File, New, something like that, to open up a file and just make some edits and then save it. And make sure when you save it in that folder you created. So don't just save it to your desktop or to some random location. Make sure you save it to the same place that you created that folder and ran git init. And after that, go ahead and run git status. You should see that things have changed. So I'm going to wait a minute or two for people to do that and see if you can get that to work. Let me know if you're able to get that to work. Again, you don't want to literally run this command. Just open up a new file that's in that folder you created before and add some content. It could be code. It could just be random text. Just bang your fingers over the keyboard. That's fine too. Just put some information in there and save it. Has anybody gotten that to work? And if not, where are you stuck? All right, I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, what do I do after git init? Okay, yeah, it should say no commits. So if you go back, so you ran git init, right? You can run git status. It should give you some information like where it says no commits yet. That's what you should see if you run git status. Then after you do that, make a new file. Yeah, make a new file, put some text inside, and save. That's right. That's exactly what you need to do. And make sure you do it in this folder where you ran git init. So don't just save it wherever. It has to actually be in the repository because Git can only detect stuff that happens within a folder. And yes, it should say no commits yet because we haven't made a commit. That is actually, I think, our next slide. Oh no, here it is. Okay, two slides. We're getting there to make a new commit. So are people able? What you'll know you've done it right when you run git status. You should see something about untracked files, and the text will be red. That's how you know you've done this step correctly. So has anyone been able to get this to work? Oh no, the red's right. No, the red's good. That's good. Because it's warning you that you have changes, but they're not yet in Git. So other people getting the red as well. If I can get one more person who has gotten the red. Okay, you're still confused. What are you confused about? What was the last step you did? Okay, yours is untracked. Okay, that's good. Okay, so how do you save the new file to the folder we just made? Tell you what, I'll fire my Windows VM back up and show you exactly what you should be seeing. If you've gotten to the point where it says untracked files and there's red text, then you've done it correctly. Okay, so here's Visual Studio Code. I know it's probably small. I should have figured out a way to make it bigger. So I guess in Visual Studio Code, the easiest thing to do, we go to File, New File, and type in some stuff. So you know what? I'll actually try to do some code. So let's do console. If you were at the JS workshop this morning, we can do a console.log to print out some information, something like that. Oh, does it maximize it? Oh, that's really nice. So you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, because it's like this display, like the resolution is way too high for people to see it. I was worried about that. Okay, that's good. So if we do, at this point, we want to save this file and we want to save it as something. Oh, but I forgot to do git init. So first, okay, yeah, so let's make a directory. I'll just make it called hello or, oh. All right, so now if we run ls, so ls is a command you can run to look at the files that you have. So if you see, there's now a hello directory. And if I go inside of my file manager too, then you'll be able to see that. So now when I do my save as, I want to save it into that same hello folder that I made. Right, so not if you just save it on your desktop or like just into this broad area, you want to make sure you save it, go into hello, save it in here, and then, so I'm just going to call it KnightHacks.js. But again, it doesn't have to be JavaScript. You can do .txt or whatever kind of file. You can change the file type. That probably is a good thing to do. And so you save that. And now if I kind of do cd for change directory, okay, good. Someone else got it. Awesome. So if you cd into that hello that you made, that's another step I may have omitted that you should do. So cd stands for change directory or change folder, right? And you just want to type hello, or you can type that. You should, if you run ls, you should see, okay, whatever your new file is now there. And if we run git status, come on. Oh, shoot. I think I uninstalled Git. That's right, because I was going to rerun it. But if you run git status, you should see the red text. Yes, I know. This is very bad. This is why you don't uninstall things during the demo. But people have been joining. I want to make sure they were. It's fine. This will only take a minute. And we got plenty of time because I was originally going to make this an hour, but I managed to get them to extend me to 2. So we can take our time. Oh, wait. We got to change that. Okay, so do people all have, does everyone have it working at this point? Is there anyone who's still confused about what's going on? I know I'm having errors, but it should work for you if you didn't uninstall Git. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone saying they're having problems, so that's good. So just as a recap, we want to make sure we have the red text. Come on, Git. Okay. It should work now. For me anyway. All right, so yeah, so you want to change directory into that folder you made. I called mine hello, it doesn't really matter. Then if you run git status, oh, because I didn't run git init. Okay, I got to actually catch up with my own tutorial. So we run git init. Now if we run git status, you should see this. So on branch master, we'll talk about what that means. No commits yet. We haven't made any commits, so there are none. And then untracked files. And actually, these days, Git has like it's very nice. Usually tells you what you need to do. So it actually says, look, use git add file to include in what will be committed, and that's what we're about to do. And then says nothing added to commit. Okay, great. So if you're ever confused about if you're using Git, and like I run this command obsessively all the time, I'm running git status to make sure I know what's going on. So the next thing you're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually create our commit. So I'm going to jump back to my slides. Okay, so yeah, Git should know when you get that red, that means Git noticed that you made a change to your repository. Great. Next thing you have is this thing called the index. So by default, any change you make is in what's called the working tree. When it's the red, that's working tree, right? It says untracked files, and then in red it says whatever the files are. That's called the working tree. The next thing you want to do is you want to add it to the index. The index is like being like on deck for baseball. It's like you're about to be committed, but you haven't been committed yet. The reason you have this sort of difference between the working tree and the index is something you might do in software development a lot is maybe you're going along and editing something and you notice like a typo in another file or some other change you want to make. And they're kind of unrelated changes. So in the version control, you want them to appear as separate commits. So you don't want to commit them all at the same time. Well, if you use git add, you can choose what files you want to commit. Most of the time, though, this is just kind of annoying. But it definitely does have its use cases. There's a reason why it's designed like that. So if you go ahead and run git add and then the name of the file that you made. So I did KnightHacks.js. So I would run git add KnightHacks.js. But you would do whatever you saved your file as. So run that and then run git status. And you should now see it will say something in green. So let me know if that works for you. You should see a lot of the same things. On branch master, no commits yet. But now you should see it'll be in green. It'll say changes to be committed. Does anyone have that working? Yes. Okay, we have one person. Works there? Okay, awesome. So yeah, you should see changes to be committed. So now we've moved our changes on deck. And the reason why you might want to do like different things here is you could have, if you have different files, then you can only add certain ones, and then you'll have some in red and some in green. And the green will be the ones that are going to be committed, and the red are for you're going to commit them later in a different commit. That's what you'd have going on there. Okay, I'm going to move on, but if you're running into trouble, don't hesitate to let me know. So to actually make the commit, you just run git commit. So remember, you have to add first, but if you have the green in git status, you can run git commit. On your first commit, it's probably going to give you a warning and it says, please tell me who you are. Is that what people are getting? You should be getting, it probably won't let you commit the first time. It'll want you to set your username and email. Are people getting that warning? Git add isn't working for you. Okay, what are you getting for git add? What problem are you running into? What does it say? For everyone else, are you running git commit and then getting the error about, please tell me who you are? Fatal path spec. Are you in the, what do you get when you run git status? I think you might not actually be in the same folder as your, oh, that could be it. If you have a space in your file name, make one without a space. Or you can wrap your file name in quotes. Yeah, Git does not, because when you do a space, it expects it to be a new file. So if you have a space in your file name, then make sure you wrap the whole file name in quotes. That will fix that. Or yeah, you can always just make a file without a space. Yeah, Git is usually, doing files with spaces is just generally a bad idea. I just put hyphens or underscores in between. I mean, it will mostly read the same, and then you won't get weird path errors, just as a general tip. Jackson, does that fix it for you? Is that what issue you had? Oh, please enter. Okay, yeah. So hold on a minute. You can enter the commit message, but if you are getting the please tell me who you are error about not having an email or a name, then it should tell you two commands. So there'll be a git config -- global user.email, and then you type your email, and then git config -- global user.name, and then you type your name. So go ahead. If you are getting that error, then just follow the instructions. Do what it says, except put your actual email and your actual name, or whatever you want to appear for your Git commits. The reason it has that is because if you use Git on like a software project, and maybe you add some code to something, and a few years later, someone is trying to figure out what your code does and they don't understand, well, they can reach out to you as the maintainer of that code, the person who originally wrote it, and theoretically ask you like, hey, what's going on here? I don't understand. Or are you okay if we delete this? Why'd you do this in this weird way? Whatever. That's what that's for. So if you're getting that error, run those Git configs. If you're not getting that, for your commit message. So are people all at the point where we're able to run those Git configs and are at the commit message part? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any objections. So you should get, if you set it up with VS Code, it should open the file up in VS Code. And you'll see a bunch of like lines with a hash in front of them that are all like commented out. This is where you want to actually write your commit message. So there's actually quite a lot of things you need to know to write a commit message. I see a lot of people write bad commit messages. They don't follow the rules. And technically you can write whatever you want, but there are some standard conventions that like companies and other people expect you to follow. And if you don't, they'll be like, this person is a noob at using Git. So if you read these now and learn these, then you won't need to worry about people thinking that about you. There's two main parts to a commit message. The first is necessary. The second is optional. So you have a short summary that's 80 characters or less, and that goes on line 1. So you have this file. On line 1, you type in that. You need that. If you have a larger commit, and I would say the vast majority of commits, you don't need to do this. But if you have a big commit with lots of changes, and you want to like kind of explain what you did, then you can also write an optional message. So what you would do is you still write a very short 80-character summary on line 1. You leave line 2 blank. That's very important. It will be mad if you don't leave line 2 blank. And then on line 3 and beyond, line 3, line 4, line 5, whatever, you can write your extended description of what you did. In terms of actually writing a commit message, you always want to use the imperative mood. And the easiest way to do this correctly is just try to read your commit message as an extension to this commit will. So sometimes I'll see people do things like fixed bug. But if you read that with this commit will, it doesn't make sense. This commit will fixed bug, right? The grammar is obviously wrong. It needs to be this commit will fix bug or fix the bug. So your commit message should be fix bug, not fixed. Don't say things in the past tense. And you might think that's kind of silly, but that's the convention. So make sure you do that. The main exception to this is on the very first commit, people will often just type initial commit, which this commit will initial commit doesn't necessarily line up. I mentioned with the very first commit. But all your other commits, people usually use the imperative mood. You should too. Capitalize the first letter. That's a good thing to do. And basically explain what you did. So one example might be fix bug or add new file, modify hello world function, something like that. That's the kind of thing you would have for your commit message. So what you want to do is type a message. So you can just use initial commit for the first one. Go ahead and save that file. So if you're using VS Code Control S, and then go ahead and close the file. And then in your shell, you should see that some text gets printed out and it moves on. If you run Git Status, you'll now see something a little different. Now, I know that was a whole lot of stuff. Were people able to get that to work? If not, what confused you? Oh yeah, I can blink back to VS Code. Okay, so we're back in VS Code here. Let me maximize it. Okay, so I made my edits here. I had to do the whole Git config -- global. What do you type after? Okay, so you typed initial commit. Are you using Git bash? Yeah, okay, so if you're using Git bash, it likely defaulted to Vim, and this is why I was saying you kind of might have issues with Vim. If you type the following, so the escape key followed by the colon, followed by W, followed by Q, and then you hit enter, that should get you out of there. Did that work for you? Let me know. Okay, I see a lot of people are jumping in just now. If you're just joining now, we've already installed Git at this website, but it might be advisable at this point just to kind of follow along, and you can DM me later if you want to get it set up. But if you do want to, you're in the part where it says, please tell me who you are. Okay, so you need to run, if you actually look here on my thing, you can see these two lines where I run git config -- global. Basically, when it says, please tell me who you are, it should say, if you read what it says, it should say like run these two commands, git config, whatever. And yeah, just run the commands. Put in your email, put in your name that you want it to recognize you as. If you run those two commands and then run git commit again, it should be fixed. Git actually has some of the best error messages in a program I've seen. So if you just do what Git tells you, for the most part, that's pretty good. Okay, it works now? Okay, great. Yeah. So if you're using Git bash, it probably defaulted to Vim, the ubiquitous text editor. And that's why I was saying you might have some troubles is actually one of the most popular Stack Overflow questions is how to exit Vim, because a lot of people find it difficult. It is kind of unintuitive. I'll give them that. So yeah, we've added, for people who have just joined and we're trying to figure out what's going on here, Git is just like Google Drive for your code. And so all we've done so far, we've created a blank, we installed Git by using that link. Oh, someone pinned it. Awesome. I don't know how that happened. Someone pinned it. Thank you, organizer, whoever who's watching. We created a new file. I called it KnightHacks.js, but it could be whatever language, even just plain text. You can use Git for your notes for class if you take your notes in plain text. So I wrote a line of code. Then I ran Git. We'll Git init to initialize the Git repository. Git add, and then the file that I edited, and then Git commit. And then that's why we're getting this whole error about who are you. So if you run those commands and then run Git commit again, then it should open a new file where you can type in your commit message. And when you save and close that file, you will have a commit. Now, if you want to check if your commit actually went through, well, you can do Git Status. You shouldn't see red anymore. You should see on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean, right? So there's that working tree I was talking about, right? Because all of our code is committed. So our working tree doesn't have anything in it. There's nothing to commit, so nothing in our index that's being staged. And on branch master, we'll get to branches a little bit later in this talk. If you want to see your commit, you can run Git Log. So that is actually my next slide. I guess they're not in the slides anymore, but I'll roll back to that in a minute. Git Log. And you'll see this kind of interesting looking layout here. When you have more commits, it will show more, but it should see commit, some big long hash made out of letters and numbers, this head, a little arrow, master. Then you should see your name and email, whatever you set those as, or it might have given you an automated one depending on how it was set up. The day it was committed, and you'll see that commit message as well. So yeah, Git Log is another great command. If you're ever confused about what your commits look like, then run Git Log. That'll print out, like in a linear order, all the commits you've done. Very useful for debugging too, because you can see if you like added someone else's commits and then things stopped working, you might be able to riddle out why. So let me head back to my slides at this point. Does everyone have that working? Oh, I just reshared the same thing. Okay, so yeah, the log, if Git Log will give you all the logs. If it's short enough, it will just print out in your terminal. But if you have a lot of commits, sometimes it will take you into a separate, oh, you walked away, what did you miss? What was the last thing you did? You did do. But okay, so Git Log, if you run that, sometimes it will give you like a scrolling thing. And you might be like, how do I escape from that? You can use Q. And then you can use the arrow keys, or if you know Vim, you can use Vim bindings to scroll. Both of those will work. Okay, branching. So what do you do after git commit? Okay, so after git commit, you can run git status. Okay, so did you successfully run git commit, Liz? And then Sophie, what do you do after git commit? If you run git log, so here, let me go back to that slide. If you run git log, you should see a log message about your commit. Do you see that? It'll print out like commit and then like a really long number, and then there'll be some other colored things, and you should see your commit message somewhere in there. Okay, Sophie, run git status. What does git status tell you? You may have not actually done the commit yet. No commits yet, but does it say nothing to commit? Okay, did you do git add? Like, did you ever create it? So Git hasn't detected you made any changes. So probably what you did is you didn't save your file into the same folder as you initialized Git. If you check in VS Code in the terminal, you should see like PS and then a folder. You got an empty commit message. If you didn't type a commit message, it might have just given you a default one. But it's not a big worry. If you didn't get it to work exactly right the first time, try to like make an edit to your file or add a new line or whatever. Run git add again, run git commit again, and see if you can make it work the second time. So Sophie, did you get were you able to save a different file into the same folder? Because if you run git status and you just get no commits, nothing to commit, then that means that you haven't changed anything in your Git repository, because Git would have noticed and would have done the red. Is anyone else having issues, by the way? Or is everyone else able to get git log to print out the commit they made? You're at log. Okay. So Darren, when you ran git log, did that show you the commit you ran? Are you committed? Yep. Okay, cool. Awesome. Kavi and Sophie, were you able to resolve your problems or no? You still stuck? Still stuck. Okay. So when you run, if are you running Git status and you still see nothing, how do you stay in the file in the same folder? Okay. So did you make a folder in the terminal? So in the, okay, that's what you missed. That's fine. Okay. So in the terminal, remember, don't type the $. In the terminal, you want to do make directory using Sublime. Okay. Well, you still need to open a terminal somewhere. So if that's, if you go to your, the bottom left, okay, you're using Ubuntu. That's fine. Okay, so you should have Git there. So that'd be through Windows subsystem for Linux, and I'm not exactly sure how the folders line up. But if you go to your Ubuntu terminal and you type this, pwd print working directory, that will give you the full path of where your terminal currently is. So what does that give you? No, there aren't. Well, okay, there are some slight differences because by default, the terminal in Visual Studio Code uses PowerShell, which is the Windows terminal, whereas Git Bash is using a Bash shell, which comes from Linux. So there are some slight differences, but for Git, pretty much everything's going to look the same. Okay, so when you print that, so your terminal is in your desktop Hello World folder. So what you need to do is in Sublime, make a new file in Sublime. Have you done that? Once you do that, go to File, Save As, and make sure you save it inside that path. So it needs to be in Sophie agu/desktop/hello world. What do you do when you get to the commit edit message? Okay, so it should, are you using Visual Studio Code? Okay, yeah, you see it? Okay, great. That's good. So yeah, so if you make a file in there, save something in there, and then if you run Git Status, you should see the red, then you can do, so here, I'll make a little list for you. Git Status, then Git Add, whatever your file was called, and then Git Commit. And you should be essentially caught up to where we are. Okay, so Kavi, what do I do when I get to the commit edit message? So in VS Code, did it open up, you see all the comments, right? You see all the hashes down the side? Okay, great. So that's what I was talking about with let me go back a couple slides. Okay, writing a commit message, right? So there's two parts. Mainly, we just use the first part. So on the first line, you have up to 80 characters to type a short summary of what your commit does. So usually your first commit, you type initial commit, but you could type whatever. In general, you should follow that rule. So type initial commit there. And then if you save and exit that file, it should do the commit. You can check it by going to our next slide, right? Git log. If you run Git log, that should show you a log of all the commits you've made. So right now there'll be just the one. Okay, you get that to work? So did you run Git log? Do you see the commit you made? Like the big long number and then whatever commit message you chose? Got it. Okay, awesome. Sophie, are you caught up? Did you run on those commands? Were you able to get it to work? Cool. Okay, now we can jump ahead. So that is actually the vast majority of the stuff you're going to do in Git. You'll never need to do like git init again, but you do a lot of edit a file or create a new file, run git add on that file, and then run git commit. And then you type a commit message, you close that, and it creates a new commit. That is the vast majority of what you do in Git. The rest of this is all stuff you'll still do, maybe even on a daily basis, but that is the vast majority of Git. You can understand that you're like 70 to 80% of the way there. The rest of the stuff is more fancy. So branching. Sometimes this is if you're collaborating with other people, you're going to want to make multiple branches. Because unlike Google Docs, if you think about a Google Doc, everyone can edit it simultaneously, which is fine because if I, say, change the title of the document while you work on, page 3 or whatever on something else, that's fine. It's not going to break anything. But in a piece of code, imagine if you have a big file and someone is modifying the top of the code, changing variable names or something, and you're modifying things at the bottom of the code at the same time. That could very easily cause things to break because you might be relying on stuff that's happening above. So for that reason, usually everyone's working on their own branch. And then you try to merge all the changes back together later. Because if you edit it at the same time, most likely things are going to break. So you use what's called branching. It's very easy to make branches in Git. You just type git branch and then the name of a branch you want to make. So in this case, I'm running git branch, my branch. That should make a new branch. So if you run that, now git branch doesn't actually switch you over to that branch. It just makes it. So if you want to switch to that branch, you do git checkout my branch. Why it's called checkout, not exactly sure, but that's just what they decide it should be. But if you run, so git branch, my branch, or git branch, whatever, you can call it whatever you want, and then git checkout, that same thing, that should switch you to the branch. It should say, and Git should give you some feedback, something like here. Let me run it and see. Okay, yeah, so on my machine, it says switch to branch, my branch. Are people able to get that to work? Oh, I'm on the wrong slide now. So those are the commands you want to run. And there's many purposes for branches. Sometimes you might want to have like most major projects will have like a stable or a release branch, and then like an experimental branch with all the latest changes that might not be as well tested. So are people having success with making a branch and switching to it? One way you can tell if you're on the correct branch, if you run Git Status on your new branch, it will say, remember before how it says on branch master? So master is just the default branch. If you run Git Status after you've done the checkout, then you should get on branch something else. So has anyone succeeded in making a new branch and switching to it? Yep, okay, cool. So we made a new branch, switched to it. If you run Git Status, it will tell you you're on that branch. Great, okay. But this isn't really that useful unless we can actually use our new branch for something. So once you have a new branch, something you're going to eventually want to do is merge it back into your main branch, right? So if I'm making changes on my branch and you're making changes on your branch, each branch is like a different copy. So when we did that new branch, now we have 2 copies. We have one copy that's the master branch, and we have another copy that's whatever your new branch is called, or my branch in this case. There are 2 main ways you can combine branches. You have the merge and you have the rebase. Rebase is a dangerous command. It's very powerful. I'll probably do a whole talk on it at some point in the future. But merge, it definitely is more intuitive and simpler and less likely to screw things up. So that is the one we'll probably have time to cover today. At the end, I might have some time to go over rebase, but we're going to start with merge. In order to actually do a merge, you need to make some more commits. So while you're on your new branch, make some changes, run git add on whatever on their file, run git commit, add some new commits. When that happens, let me see. Okay, yes. Can you see that diagram? For some reason, it doesn't always load into my slides. You might end up with a situation like this. So this is kind of a little graph of how you can imagine. You should imagine your Git commits is kind of like a graph. So this right here, this very first one, that's your initial commit. And then here would be some other commit you made, like your second commit. And then maybe at that point, you made a branch. And on your branch, you've added 3 new commits. Right, so in total, we have 5 commits. We have 2 commits that are on master and my branch. So we made 2 commits on master. Then we did a branch, which made a copy. And that branch has 3 more commits on it that we made. So 3 separate changes. So if we go back to master, master is still pointing at this commit here, that second commit. My branch, though, is pointing at this 5th commit. And notice the way Git actually works, it doesn't actually copy it. So you can think of it like a copy, but it uses a bunch of pointers. If you've taken like CS1, you'll know what that is. It uses pointers. That way it doesn't have to duplicate information. So my branch and master can both kind of share these commits without having to make a duplicate. That's why you have your graph kind of looking like this. So if you want to merge, let's say you've done this. So your master is, say, your stable branch. You've made 2 commits on it, right? So you did git add, git commit, and you did git add, git commit again. Then you did git branch. You checked out your new branch, and you made 3 more commits. And you're like, okay, I made these 3 commits on my branch. This is great. I want to merge those changes back into the master branch, back into the main branch. And this could happen if you're working on a project here at KnightHacks. You're working on your project, right? Someone else might be like, hey, I'm going to add a new feature. So they make their own branch. They make, 3, 4, 5, 20 commits, whatever, however many commits they want to make for the new feature. And like, okay, my new feature is ready to go. We can merge it into the master branch. So here's what you would do. You check out the master branch. So you want to check out whatever your destination branch is. So wherever you want the changes to end up, you check out that branch. And then you run git merge, and the branch you want to merge into the branch you just checked out. So when we check out master, we're now on the master branch. Then git merge my branch. And what that actually does is, at least in this case, it would do a fast forward merge. So this is where the bullet points kind of come in. If you have this is a very simple situation for Git. If your master branch hasn't made any changes in the meantime, then it can just say, okay, well, the only difference between master, which is commit number 2 here, and my branch, which is commit 5, is these 3 commits. So what it will do is it'll take that master and it'll just point it to where my branch is. So instead of master being on commit 2, it'll just move master to commit 5. And it won't have to do anything else. That's all that will happen. So that's the simple case. Fast forward merges are good. They just work. Nothing can go wrong. Something that can go wrong is when you do a normal merge. So if you don't have a fast forward merge, that means that you had diverging changes. So you might have a graph that looks like this. So over here, right, you have 2 commits on master. We do the same thing. We branch. We make a new branch called my branch. And you have these 3 commits, these 3 blue commits. But in the meantime, someone else has committed this 3rd gray commit onto master, right? So I think have it labeled as diverging commit. So someone else has made that commit. Now you've both made changes to the same file. So you can think of a branch as like a parallel universe, right? It's a copy. So you both were originally here. Whoever made my branch has now made these sets of changes. Someone else, based on that original same 2nd commit, has made some other sets of changes. Now Git is very good at automatically merging. So there's a very fair chance that when you do git merge, it will be able to automatically combine this without an issue. But if you edited the same thing that the other person edited, there's no way for Git to know what to do, right? If we both edited the same thing, how does Git know which one to choose, right? In some cases, you might want to combine. You want both the changes. In other cases, you only want one or the other. And maybe in other cases, you want to have neither, right? It's entirely possible all those situations could be occurred. There's no way for Git to know what to do. It can't automatically do it. In that case, you'll get a merge conflict. So I'm actually going to do a demo to show you a very, very, very simple conflict and what you might do to resolve it. So give me one moment. Is all of that making sense to you? So this is, now we're starting to get into like the main Git theory stuff. Like this is the theory of Git, why you use it, and these are some of the problems you can run into. Okay, sorry, it took me longer than usual to get this booted up. So let me share my screen now. Okay, so do you see that now? It should just be a massive terminal. Let me try to make it a little bit bigger so you can see. Can you see this? Can you see me typing clear? No one says anything, I'm going to assume that it's all okay. Yes, okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and make a file. So we're going to make a folder for, I'm going to just do this complete from scratch. So yeah, we can make hello world. Oh, I already made hello world. Okay. So we'll make hello world 2. So we're going to make that just makes a folder. CDs, we're going to change into that folder, right? So we're going to, that's basically like clicking in. Oh, I changed into the wrong one though. Change into hello world 2. Change in that folder. Run git init. Right? So initialize empty git repository. Great, we have that. Now I'm going to write a little simple file for our first commit. So let's do const.log. KnightHacks is the best. All right, so here we are. We have our changes. If we run Git Status, we can see, okay, untracked files. So what do? Git add. And now if we run Git Status, we can see, okay, changes to be committed, Git commit. And so we type, so I'll do initial commit. So now what we want to do is we want to make 2 branches that will definitely have a conflict. So git branch, and I'll just call it my branch. And then git checkout, my branch. So now we're on our new branch. If we look around, so ls, right, to list all the files, we still have our KnightHacks.js, right, because it's an exact copy, nothing has changed. Now let's say I decide, you know, KnightHacks is so great, we should say it's the best 5 times, just so people know for sure, right? So great, this is some new changes. If we run git status, look, git is noticed, it says modified KnightHacks.js. So we can add that, we can commit it. And so what would a good commit message for this be? Maybe something like duplicate print message. And remember, we want to say it in the imperative mood. So it should be, this commit will duplicate print message. And that makes sense, so we know we're good. Commit that. So now if we look at the Git log, we can see what has happened. So here you can see head always represents, this capital head is part of Git. That represents where you currently are. And head is, right now, it's pointing to my branch, right? Because we're on my branch, we just add this commit. But master is still back a commit, right? Because master is its own copy. It hasn't actually had these changes incorporated, so it's doing its own thing. So let's check out master. And let's make different changes in master. So this will cause a merge conflict. So maybe, you know, I have a different idea. I also want to make it print out 5 times, but instead of doing it with just copy and paste, I'm going to do it the smart way and do a for loop, right? Something like this. So now we both edited the same file, and I'm like, hey, this is a great change. You know, and this, again, you would never personally do this to yourself, but maybe somebody else ran into this. You know, you both fix the same bug or the same problem in slightly different ways. It could happen. And then you're going to get a merge conflict. So use for loop. And if we check, this commit will use for loop. That makes sense. Okay, so if we look at our Git log, if you notice, now because the branches have diverged, it won't show them in the same log because master, they both of our branches share an initial commit, but master now has this use for loop, whereas my other one has the duplicate commit. So now let's try to do Git merge our other branch. So boom, this is what happens when you get a merge conflict. So it'll say auto merging, it'll try to do it, then it'll say conflict. merge conflict in KnightHacks.js. There might be multiple files. There's a merge conflict. Yada yada. If this happens, like, don't panic. It's okay. Most merge conflicts are relatively simple to fix. And I think a lot of people have trouble fixing merge conflicts because they just think, oh, it's so confusing. I can't understand what's going on. Git is giving me all this information. I don't know what to do. But most of the time, it is relatively easy to fix a merge conflict. You just have to understand what Git is doing, what it's showing you, because it gives you all the tools you need to figure out what to do. So if you run Git Status, right? Git Status is always what we run if we're not sure what's happening. You'll see this thing called unmerged paths. And it actually tells us, so we're on branch master, we have unmerged paths, fix conflicts, and run Git Commit. So we need to fix our conflicts and run Git Commit. And look, if you decided, hey, I was really hoping this wouldn't have conflicts, I just can't deal with this today, help me go back, then you can run Git Merge -- abort to give up the merge. And it'll take you right back to where you were before you tried to do this. But we do want to fix this. So it'll show you unmerged paths. And in this case, it says, look, both modified KnightHacks.js. So what we need to do is open up KnightHacks.js. Now, if you're using VS Code or something like that, sometimes there are plugins that can help you resolve your conflicts. But personally, I always just straight up read the output straight from Git and solve it that way. Because I think if you understand what this means, it will be relatively simple to understand what's going on. So you're going to get, and this could happen at multiple places in the file. You're going to get this, maybe you could have some parts that Git was able to automatically fix and other parts where Git couldn't automatically fix. At some point, you're going to see this head with a bunch of less than signs pointing to the left. And then you're going to see a dividing line of equal signs. And then you're going to see a bunch of greater than signs and my branch. So what's going on here is Git is saying, look, we weren't able to figure out both of these changes were made in the same place. Head, so our current branch, right? Master, in this case, has this. So it's saying, look, master has this for loop. And then there's the dividing line, and it says, pointing to my branch has this instead. And Git said, look, these are both, what it's saying by doing this is both of these were in the same place. I couldn't figure out what to do to resolve this, because if you make changes at different places in the file that are far away and unrelated, 95% of the time, Git will just automatically be able to handle that for you. It's actually really good. But if you purposefully edit the same part or by accident edit the same part, there's no way Git could figure out what to do. So it's giving you the option. It's saying, look, here's what is on master, right? Here's what's on head, what you currently have. Here's what you're trying to merge in. All you need to do is take this whole section and replace it with whatever you want to go there. So maybe I decide, you know what, KnightHacks is so great, I want it to print 10 times, and I want to have both. So in that case, you just delete all of those conflict markers, all the equals, all the greaters, all the lesses, and you have this, boom. In this case, though, probably that's not what we want to do. If we look, this is really the same solution, right? We were trying to print out this KnightHacks is the best multiple times. The two different branches took different approaches. But if we think about it, which of these is writing better code? This is like copy paste code. If you're doing copy paste, you're doing it wrong. So get rid of that. This is the more preferable solution. So we just keep that. You can also choose to delete it all. That's usually, in my experience, doesn't come up much. Usually you want to either keep both. Like if you're in C and you're doing includes and you have like conflict with that, usually you want to keep both because you want to import all the things, not just some of them, right? If one branch included some new things, another branch includes some different new things, you want to include all the things. But in cases like this, you might want to just keep one of the solutions, whatever. So you resolve the conflict, and that's all there is to resolving a conflict. You just save the file, X out of that, and now if you run Git Status, you'll still see the same thing. But look, it actually tells us what to do. Git add file to mark resolution. So we fixed it, right? We manually fixed the merge. And that's how you manually fix a merge conflict. It's not that hard. So you just run git add on that file like we always do when we're about to do a commit. Git status. And then look, it'll say all conflicts fixed, but you are still merging. Use git commit to conclude the merge. Really, if you run git status, you can get so far. Git is so helpful these days. They've made so many updates to it to make it user-friendly. It will mostly handhold you through all the commands you need to run if you just read what it says. So git commit, and then it automatically, whenever you do a merge, it'll create this merge commit that will have this kind of default message, merge branch, my branch into master. And I'm happy with that. If you notice, it actually follows the pattern we're following, right? This commit will merge branch, my branch into master. So that's great. So we're going to keep that, close the file, and boom, we have successfully done a merge. So if we look at our log now, our master is on this merge commit. And our master also has this use for loop, but look, it also has now this duplicate print message in the log as well. Now merge only merges when we did the merge, right? So let me go back to that. When we ran the merge, we merged my branch, and you can kind of think of this as into your current branch. Oh, I cannot type. So in this case, we merged, by default, you're always merging into the branch you're currently in. So this is Vim. That's the editor I told you to stay away from because there's a bit of a learning curve. If there's interest, I might run a workshop on using it someday. But it doesn't have a lot of times as many of the nice features you get with something like VS Code. But it does work on the terminal. So I don't know. I've just used it for a long time, and I'm so used to it I can't leave. So it's like an addiction. But anyway, by default, yeah, I'm not sure I would necessarily recommend it. By default, it's going to merge that into whatever branch you're currently on. So we merged my branch into master, but that doesn't change my branch at all. So if we check out my branch, and if we can open up KnightHacks, and we can see it's still the same as it was before because we never merged it. So what you might want to do is then from here, go ahead and merge master back into this, and you're going to get, in this case, you're going to fast forward because we already resolved the conflicts. So now they'll both be in the same since you've already done the merge. And now we have both of our branches. If you look at our log, my branch and master are both now on the same commit on this latest merge. Yay, everyone is up to date. And now you go make diverging changes again and fix it again. So that is a simple merge conflict resolution. They might seem scary, but if you just keep running Git Status and reading what it says, and you understand what the less than signs, the equal, and the right than signs indicate, it's really quite simple. Git is trying to help you out, saying, this is what the one branch says, this is what the other branch says, tell me what to do. And you just tell it what to do, and add it, and commit it, and you fix the merge conflict. That's all there is to it. So with that, I'm going to head back to the slides. Are there any questions on that? So when you're merging, how do you know what you're merging to? So you're merging to whatever branch you're currently on. So like we did in that case, we did git checkout master. So when we checked out master, that's how it knows we're merging to master. There's also like an argument, like there's a dash something you can use to indicate what you're merging to. But rarely do you want to use that. Basically, what you want to do is check out the branch you want to merge commits into, and then type git merge with the branch you want to get the commits from. Does that make sense? Okay, gotcha, awesome. So that was that demo. Okay, GitHub. So we still have about half an hour left here. Again, this is now, like, if you understand merge and you fully understand how to do that, now you're like 90% of the way there. It's mostly downhill from here. And then at the very end, I have a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff that we may or may not get to that's like more convoluted, like rebase and stuff. But now we're going to do GitHub. So if you don't already have a GitHub account, head over to github.com and create one if you're still following along. All GitHub is, if you notice, everything we've done has been local, right? So we haven't this hasn't touched the internet at all. You can use Git in that way totally. But usually you want to either back up your code somewhere. So I do this a lot with like class notes or whatever. You want to back it up. So I back it up to GitHub. Or if you're collaborating with other people, you have to connect with them somehow. So GitHub is a popular solution. You also have similar ones like GitLab and Bitbucket. They're mostly all the same. It's basically just a server somewhere that holds your code. That's all it is. And you can actually self-host Git. So if you're like, hey, I like GitHub, but it's owned by Microsoft, I think that's suspicious. I'm super paranoid. You can actually like fire up a server and with enough effort, make your own Git server that'll work just like GitHub. Except that if it crashes, then you lose everything, which GitHub has lots of like redundant backups. You probably shouldn't do that, but you can. You could if you wanted to. So yeah, head over to github.com, and if you click sign up, how do you go make to your default user directory instead of staying on hello world? I think what you're trying to say is, how do I just quickly change back to my default directory? The easiest way to do that is just run cd, change directory. By default, that will do cd with tilde, and what that tilde represents your home. So yeah, that's how you can do that. Also, another useful one is cd ... That will take you back up one folder. Between those two, that's most of the cd you realistically need to know. Okay, so yeah, make a GitHub account. So this is just kind of a slide showing what the architecture of Git is. So the clients would be like people like us. Like in this case, it shows like different types of computers, but this could be like me, you, some third person. And we're all using the internet to connect to the server. That's GitHub. That's where the main central code base is. You can technically do like a peer-to-peer and like pull from another person, but usually people have like a central server that's like, this is the official server that has the code, and this is the one you should trust. But you can use it in a decentralized way if you put in a lot of effort. So how do we link our repository to GitHub? So you can create a new repository in GitHub and then clone it, and that will automatically set everything up for you. Or you can link an existing one to GitHub. Both will work. So I'm going to head over to my GitHub here. So let's create a new repository. There's a big green new button here on the home page, or this little plus icon you can see here, and you can do new repository. I'm just going to call it workshop repo. I'll make it public. I rarely ever check into these things. You can always add it later. It's not a big deal. And you just click creating a repository. GitHub will try to help you with all this information about what to do, but you don't need to worry about that. Actually, what you can do is if you follow this here, that's basically what we're about to do here. But we've created a new repository. There's nothing in it. The main thing you want to worry about is this link. So you should get this link here. It says HTTPS, and it'll give you a URL that represents this repository. That's like your Git link. If you copy that and you go back to your terminal, then you can run. Well, first you want to check out your master branch or whatever branch you want to push up to the server. And then, hold on, let me close this thing, these blinds. It's getting really bright for some reason. Oh, now it's like striped. Okay, that's better. So you can check out your main branch, and then what you want to do is run this command. So git remote, set URL, origin, and then you put that link in that spot. So I don't know if anyone's still following along at this point, but you put that link there, you run that command. And then if you run git push, that should push up your code. Is anyone able to get that to work? I can kind of demo what that looks like. That'd probably be a good thing. Yep, okay, so create a new repo, then you should get a link. Let me know when you have the link. Okay, so you have that. So you want to run git remote set URL origin, and then paste in that link, or you can type it. Okay, great. So you want to run this exact command, git remote set URL origin, and then you put in that link. So what did I call it? Workshop something. Shoot, I already forget. Hold on. Workshop repo. Okay. And you can put a dot git at the end. No, so git init does create a repo. Git init creates a local repository. If you want one on the server that's on GitHub, you have to run. You have to do if you want to push into GitHub. So yeah, you can use Git completely offline, right? The repository is just that change tracking. If you want to sync it up to the cloud or into GitHub, then you need to do this. And basically, they are two separate repos. So as we're going to see here, you have to be careful about how you maintain it, because your GitHub repo and your local repo aren't automatically synchronized. You have to manually synchronize them. They exist as two separate repos, one on your local machine and one in GitHub. So they really are two different repos. That's why you have to make it twice. In the future, if you want to do this in a quicker way, you can create a new repository in GitHub and then do a clone. If you do git clone, you've seen that notation before. Git clone, then you type this link, and that will automatically do this remote setup for you, which is, kind of a verbose command. Okay, so if I run this, in theory, hold on, let me check out master. In theory, this should work. Hold on, I probably just have a minor typo or something. Oh, okay. It's not set URL. So if you already have an existing URL, like you already have it hooked up to one repo and you want to connect it to a different one, you can do that. If you don't have one already, you need to do add. So sorry, my mistake. Ignore the bad slides. You need to do add. And then you should do git push. Oh, and yeah, the first time you do git push, so because our repository on GitHub is totally blank, it doesn't even have a master branch. You only have to do this once. The very first time you push, you have to do this command. And this is probably why I didn't put it in my slides, because Git is so great, it will just automatically warn you that you can't do this, and it will tell you what to do. It really is pretty nice. So you see all this information, delta compression. I'm not really sure what it does, but somehow it pushes it up to GitHub. So now if we go back to, I'm going to go back to GitHub, and you will see that my file is now there, hopefully. You can see it is now here. You can see, look, here's KnightHacks.js. It's there. Our other branch, now notice we didn't push our other branch up. So if we want to do that, we need to repeat that process of the git remote. And we have to, not the git remote, we have to repeat the git push -- set upstream, that whole shebang. We have to repeat that if we want to push up our other branch. But now you've pushed it up to GitHub. And yeah, there's that. Now let's say something you might want to do is if you're working on a team, let me make this bigger. If you're working on a team, you probably want to add other people to your repository so you can all work together. So you just go here to settings, manage access. So on the top, you'll see like this code, issues, pull requests. I'm not going to have time to go over all of that, but if you're doing like an open source project, people can open issues. So like there's, have you ever seen in an app like it crashed and it says like, please file a bug here or something? That's where it might link you to this page where you can say, here's my issue, whoever wrote this, please fix. Whatever, you have a whole bunch of these different things. But what you want to do is go to settings and then this manage access. And here you can invite a collaborator. So you just type someone in by username, full name, or email. You can click that, and then they'll be able to commit to your repository as well. I don't have anyone lined up who's like going to edit things, but what I can do to show you what it would look like if someone did edit is make some edits on GitHub itself. So I'm gonna create a new file, and I don't know, let's call it hello world.txt. I don't know, I'm just kind of making things up here. Type in some random text, great. And then commit, create hello world.txt. Notice GitHub also follows the convention, very important. Commit directly to the master branch. Yep, this is fine. So I'll commit this. So now imagine that it wasn't me who made that, right? Maybe one of my collaborators did that. For whatever reason, whether I did it through the GitHub interface or someone else made a commit, there's now this commit, create hello world, that is not on my local machine. So let's go and see what that looks like locally on my local system. Because it does not automatically keep them in sync. That's something people sometimes have a misunderstanding about. They think, oh, once you've linked it, it like forever stays linked. That is not true. What will happen, my shell actually has this cool feature where it shows a down arrow when there's changes to be pulled, but usually it won't say anything like that. You can run Git Status. What you want to usually run is git fetch -- all first. So I think mine automatically runs in the background once in a while, but you may need to manually do that. If you run git fetch -- all, it will check the server for new changes, and it'll say this fetching origin, right? And then if you run Git Status, it will give you this message. So on branch master, right, that's where we are. And then your branch is behind origin/master by 1 commit and can be fast forwarded. Use git pull to update your local branch. Nothing to commit working tree. Clean. So this origin/master, that is the remote branch. Okay, this is GitHub. GitHub is the origin. That's why when we did the set URL or the git remote add, we had that origin. That's where the origin is coming from. So your branch is behind origin/master. So GitHub's master branch, we're behind it by 1 commit. And can be fast forwarded means that there's not guaranteed no merge conflicts. Remember we were talking about you can have a merge conflict if there's diverging changes, but this is saying that's not the case. You can just use git pull to pull those changes in. So if I run git pull very fast, it says fast forward, gives you some information. 1 line was changed, 1 file changed, 1 insertion. And now if we run, or actually that's not the one that changed. If we look, there's hello world.txt. If we open it up, it has that garbage I typed online. And remember, this isn't necessarily something you would do. You don't usually want to go to GitHub and make edits. But one of your collaborators on your team might have pushed something to the branch that you don't have. And then you have this git pull. This is also where that option I had you set earlier was. So remember when I had you set the fast forward only versus merge? So in its default configuration, when you do git pull, what it's really doing is it's doing a git fetch, and then it's doing a git merge. And I don't think this is a good default because this could cause a conflict. Because if you have made commits and someone else has pushed up different commits and then you run git pull, this could lead to a merge conflict when you're doing a pull. And when I do a pull, I only want to get updates if I'm sure it's not going to break things. So that's why I set that option. But if you like having it the other way, I think you can run, I believe you can just run like git pull, or wait, it would be, so this is the manual command, by the way. If you run man, this is anytime in bash, it might work on PowerShell as well. If you run man and then a command, it will give you lots of helpful information about that command. So we want to learn about git pull. See, what options are there? Yeah, okay, so by default, I think what you do a git pull -- merge should be an option here. Yeah, whatever. We don't have time to read the man page, but when default, if you don't have that option configured, then it will try to do a merge, which could cause a conflict. If you do have it enabled and there is a conflict, it might cause a conflict, it will just reject the merge. And then what you can do is just do a manual git merge origin master. So you can have all the same functionality as git pull, but stuff just doesn't have it automatically, which is why I prefer doing it that way. So does all of that make sense to people? I know that's a lot of, you got the error message fatal remote origin already exists. During what command were you running when that happened? Remote add URL. Hold on, let me make sure. Okay, it's not add URL, it's you have to put in origin. Git remote add origin, and then the link. Try that. Oh, and you still get fail remote origin already exists? Huh, that is interesting. Did you do git clone? You did not. Okay, what does this show? If you run this, git remote get URL origin. It says master? Okay, try running it so you may have like typed something in wrong before then. It's okay, you can fix it with the set URL. So if you do the same thing, but instead of add, you do set URL. Yeah, okay, that's fine, that's fine. Most problems in Git you can fix through enough effort. So if you run this, git remote set URL origin and then the link, then that should fix it. I think what you did is instead of the link, you typed master or something. And so it tried to do something like that. Give that a shot and let me know. You think that did it? Okay, awesome. Yeah, Git can definitely be very confusing at times. All right, I only have a couple slides left, so I'm going to try to pop back to those and see if there's anything else super important we need to do. All right, this is actually stuff we already kind of talked about. So git fetch -- all, that will synchronize the server with origin on your machine. You can run git merge. Yeah, so basically if you're working on a team project, the process is this. You want to make your edits. Git add your edits. Git commit your edits. And then git push. And then if someone else in your team has made edits you want, then run git pull. And that's pretty much it. Let's see. Yeah, then I'm just going to demo the features, but I've already done that. So with that, we have about 10 minutes for questions if people have anything. I also have some optional slides here at the end if people want to go into some more like in-depth stuff. But I know I've thrown a whole lot of information at you. It will definitely take some time for it to sink in. So don't worry if you went through this whole presentation and you were like getting lost at different steps. It definitely takes a while to get used to Git, but it's definitely worth it. It's a tool that all the major companies use. Any modern version control system is going to be very similar. How are you able to edit the .txt files directly from the terminal? Okay, and you want to go over the optional slides? Yeah, sure. Okay, so the txt files directly, that's an editor called Vim. If you notice, I typed Vim before the file. That is just a terminal editor. So just like you have like a graphical editor like VS Code, Vim is just an editor that runs in the terminal. So yeah, if you're interested in that sort of thing, feel free to check it out. Vim, I use Vim for all my code. Use Vim emulation in VS Code. I have tried that, but it's still not as snappy as normal Vim in my experience. So I don't know. I just use, it is a bit laggy. Yeah, and normal Vim is just like lightning speed of thought fast, and that's one of the main reasons I use it. But yeah, Vim emulation modes in a lot of editors are nice, but I've never found one that was quite good enough. Yeah, if you want to go over the optional slides, sure. We can try to get through some of them here. So Git reset. Vim is not a default feature. It is built into Git Bash, I believe. The only reason, and remember, it's actually that Git's default editor. So remember that option we changed to VS Code from Vim, the ubiquitous text editor. So by default, it will use Vim for your commit messages. But Vim has, if you want to learn how to use Vim, DM me, and I can send you some links on how you might accomplish doing that. But it uses some, it's definitely weird. It does some weird things that you're not going to be used to. Like if you just try to start typing, that won't work. And you remember when I was helping the one guy get out of it with escape : WQ. It has definitely some weird things. It can be useful. It's nice. And it is built into Git Bash. Any Linux distribution worth its salt will bundle Vim because it's very small. It's only a couple of megabytes versus something like VS Code, which is, tens, or a heavy IDE could be, if you've ever used like Eclipse or something, it can be gigabytes for a text editing tool. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's nice. But yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with Git. It's just an editor. It's the one I use. It's part of my setup, just like VS Code or Sublime. So just use what works for you. That's what I would say. All right. With that, I'm going to try to see how many of these optional slides I can get through in the next 7 minutes here. So Git reset. There's two versions, Git reset and Git reset -- hard. Be very careful. They do fairly different things. If you run Git reset on a commit, and in that commit, you would put that hash. So that long string of letters and numbers, you copy and paste that. It will undo all of your changes since that and put everything into the working tree. So like say you made a commit, but it was a mistake. You realize, oh, I shouldn't have made that commit. Let me undo that. If you just run Git reset back to the last commit onto the commit you want to be on, so maybe 2 commits or 3 commits back, it'll delete all of your new commits and put all those changes back into the working tree so you can add it and commit it again once you fixed whatever it was. If you do the same thing with -- hard, it will do the same thing, but it will drop it from the working tree. So it will just flat out delete everything you've done, that's why you want to be careful with. Oh, is it cutting out? You mean the sound? I don't know. Can you hear me? Is it cutting out? You use Git reset hard every time and now you feel dumb. Git reset, I use Git reset hard all the time, but when you use it, there's a fair chance you're going to be throwing away progress. So you got to be careful to make sure that when you're using Git reset, it's not something you should just do lightly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's why I try to do these presentations, because these should be two different commands, I think, because they're similar enough that people can get confused, but they do very different things. So yeah, they're both useful depending on the situation. I probably use Git reset -- hard more, but yeah, be careful. Okay. .git ignore. So in a Git repository, you can create a file where the file name is literally .git ignore. And inside that file, you can put the names of files or folders you don't want Git to track. So a lot of times you have something called like node modules if you have like logging files, example files that you don't want to commit to Git, but you don't want them to just be sitting in the working tree. You don't want it to be in that red text and be so annoying, right? That's, at least me personally, that bothers me if I just have files like that I'm never committing just sitting around there. So you can use git ignore and you can put the names of files in there to have Git ignore those files. In your home directory, so that's the /.gitconfig. So you can have a file called git config that will contain a bunch of options on different things. So these are some options I use. If you try to use Git with GitHub before and it makes you sign in every time you do a push or a pull, if you run this command, this git config global credential.helper store, then it will save your login credentials, so you don't have to keep redoing it all the time. All these here are a bunch of aliases. So I'm lazy. Typing checkout takes too long, so I alias it to CO. So I just type git co and it does the same thing as checkout. And same for add, commit, status, log, branch. I use those frequently enough that one-letter abbreviations are very helpful. And then this one is a great option too. Git config -- global commit.verbose true. This will, when you make a git commit with all the hashes and you have to type in your message, at the very end, if you enable this option, it will give you a summary of all your changes. It'll show you all the lines that were added and subtracted, and I find it really useful. So if you type these commands, these slides, I'll get these slides out. They'll probably be like in the description of the YouTube link when we get those up. Or you can always DM me if you want to try to use some of these changes. Git commit amend is also super helpful. So if you messed up your last commit, this happens to me all the time. If you actually look, I actually have an alias for this, CA for commit amend. But if you, let's say you committed some changes, but you test it and you realize there's a bug, like a typo or something, some small fix. Make that fix, then run git add, and if you run git commit amend, instead of making a new commit, it will meld the changes into your previous commit. So it will look like you never made the mistake, that you just did it right the first time, which is great, right? You don't want people to know that you made mistakes using Git. So yeah, and you can also, if you want to change the commit message, like you typoed, this happens to me a lot too, typo the commit message because you're going fast, you're not paying attention. Git commit amend just lets you fix up your last commit. Git stash. If you run git stash, it will take your working tree and basically set it aside. So it'll put it in a stash. This is useful, like if you try to run git pull with changes in your working tree, so you have stuff in the red text, but you're trying to do git pull, it probably won't let you do it. It'll say something like dirty working tree or whatever. So if you run git stash, it will temporarily stash away all of your changes in the working tree. So you have a clean slate. Then you can do your pull, and then you can do git stash pop to try to reapply your work. Do be careful with this because it can cause a merge conflict because it will try to reapply the changes. But if you did a git pull, then the files it originally edited might have changed. So this can cause a conflict, which you resolve the same way. But it can be useful if you're just trying to do a quick pull and you have some miscellaneous changes. Git ref log. So remember how I said if you do git reset hard, you're screwed? Git ref log can save you. It can't save changes that are uncommitted. So if you didn't commit something and you ran git reset hard, then sorry, you're out of luck. But anything that was committed, git ref log keeps track of it. So if you run git ref log, it will show you a list of all the actions you've taken, and you can, from there, check out the commits that you deleted and fix your problems. And last thing, Git Rebase. So this is this shows the different branching models. So this is kind of that initial thing we had from the beginning, right? So we have diverging changes, right? Master made this commit, my branch made these 3 commits. If you did a merge, it looks like this. So this middle one is a merge. It makes a new commit to tie all of this stuff together into the new master branch. A rebase does something different. So it's kind of dangerous because it does what's called history rewriting. But what it does is you can kind of see, here's the result. It's what it's saying is you're giving your commits a new base. So you're saying, look, these 3 commits on my branch, instead of those commits being based off of this commit here, let's pretend they were like this commit. So instead of these 3 commits being based on this commit here, let's pretend that they were actually written after this 3rd commit. And then you get that nice linear history. So what it will try to do is reapply your commits to a different, it's a way to say, instead of saying I branched on the 2nd commit, let's pretend you branched on the 3rd commit. Okay, you understand, well, why would you need to use this? Realistically, you never need to use it. One reason it comes up a lot, if you work on open source projects, like you can achieve similar things with merge pretty much always. There are a lot of good uses for it though. One thing that comes a lot is open source projects. If you are trying to contribute a feature to an open source project, usually you will try to, you'll fork the project, make edits in your own branch. And then when it comes to merge it back into the main branch, most maintainers don't want to deal with merge conflicts. So they don't want to do this merge, right? Because now they have to read your code, figure out what happened, try to resolve it with any changes they've made that have broken your code. They want you to do that because it's your feature, your responsibility. So they will tell you, before I'll merge your branch, please rebase it on the latest master. And this will make you fix all the things that went wrong. And then they can just do merge, and they'll just do, look, this is straight up fast forward merge. They don't have to do anything. They just go, haha, fast forward merge, happy day, and they can move on with their life. So that is one area you see it used a lot. There's also like a rebase interactive mode that lets you do like crazy, crazy things. And that's something I'm a big fan of. I use Git Rebase interactive all the time. But that's like a whole, at least hour talk, maybe hour and a half in and of itself. So I'll probably do that at some point, maybe in the spring. But yeah, Git Rebase is a very powerful command, but it can be very dangerous because when you do this, you can get merge conflicts, right? Because if you had conflicts in this merge in the middle, you're going to get the same conflicts with the rebase, but they're even more convoluted to resolve because of the way it works. Yeah, if you want to talk Git Rebase sometime, feel free. You can DM me on Discord, or again, I'll probably do a workshop on it at some point in the future. But yeah, that's the whole workshop, my 2 hours. I even took 3 more minutes. I probably shouldn't have. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, you can DM me on Discord. I'm at Rob3. And hopefully you learned something about Git or GitHub. By the way, I'm also running another workshop in an hour about functional programming. So if that's something that interests you, it's also aimed at beginners just like this. So if you like this talk, then come drop by my functional programming workshop in JavaScript in about an hour. All right, I'm just going to stick around until people disappear here. If you have any last questions, by all means, ask. When would you want to push to master versus other branches? So generally, when you push, here's why you might want to do that. If you have, let's say you're working at like a company and you have a stable branch, so like your release branch, like let's say you're working on Google Chrome. Okay, you have your stable release that you're giving users to download, right? You don't want that to break because people get angry if Google Chrome stops working. So you also have your master branch. Master is usually like your bleeding edge, experimental, all the latest patches, but questionable testing. It may not work perfectly. So you have your stable branch and your master branch. But it's not like there's only one person working on master or stable, right? You probably have multiple people working on both. So in that case, if I'm making some edits to the master branch, I would push those up and then other people can pull them down. And the same thing is true of the stable branch. If I'm on the stable branch and I want to make changes to that, then say we're going to do a new Chrome release, right? So I might push up some changes to the stable branch, and then I'd push those. Someone else could pull it, and they might have their own changes for the stable release, right? Because there's especially for a large project, there's so many different people who might be working on a branch at a given time. So usually you want to push up all your branches at some point. Unless you have like a small branch you're only using temporarily, it's good to always push all of your branches up, at least periodically. So at least so other people can see what you're doing. That's the answer to that question. Are we required to use Git for the hackathon? No, but you would be hard pressed to find a team that's not using Git, because otherwise, how are you collaborating on your code? That's my question for you. Are you just sending each other files over email or Discord? I don't know what you would do if you don't use Git and GitHub or something similar. If you're working solo, yeah, if you're working solo, then it's not a big deal. You can still use Git. I recommend doing it. Just, as you go along, add things, make a commit with some changes. Because you can also, remember, you can always do Git reset to roll back. Like if you run into issue, you realize your code stopped working at some point, you can roll back and it gives you a nice history. So you can see, okay, these are all the changes in the order they were made. But if you're working solo, yeah, the need is less. Oh, VS Live Code. Yeah, you could do that. That is one reason VS Code is great. You could, but again, you can see how, especially for large organizations, like the Chrome team is like dozens, if not hundreds of people. Someone like that, they can't all do VS Live Code. That's not going to work, especially if you're working in different times or in different time zones all around the world. Okay. Yeah, well, definitely. And here's the thing. If you find that using Git is like slowing you down and causing you problems, then it's okay. For the hackathon, like just, especially if you're working alone, it's not as big of a deal. But I would say I would get in the practice of using it. Something I did that helped me a lot is I started writing my notes digitally in Vim and using Git to track the versions. And just something as simple as that. It's daily use. You have to, get into the cycle of, okay, add, commit, push. And after you've done it enough, then it starts to start to make more sense and you'll get more comfortable with it. And if you have any questions at all about Git, I'm super happy to answer them. DM me on Discord or whatever other communication methods they've given you, and I will try to answer as soon as I can. With that, we are almost 10 minutes over, and I do have to probably eat something before my next talk in an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the room, but thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Hope you like this presentation, and good luck with the hackathon.